Welcome, everybody. Ooh, that's an old man's bend right there. Yeah. So we'll hear from the prime sponsor of 1424. We recognize Representative Mr. Spillane. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm doing well. Members of the committee, well, thank you for having me this morning. I'm hoping this is something you'll find as easy as we did. This came on consent from the House. It was unanimous committee support. This is a simple housekeeping bill. We had listed when we added the new gun from Smith & Wesson a number of years back that does 50 caliber, we called it a 50 caliber Smith & Wesson in our RSA, and it's actually called a Smith & Wesson 500. So it's listed in the RSA wrong, and if we were going to open this up and make that change, I talked with Colonel Jordan and asked him, do you have any problem if we simplify the list so we don't have to keep listing every single caliber as it comes out and keep putting legislation in? And he said, no, none at all. And he said, he suggested we just go ahead and say 357 and bigger, and that's what we've done. So instead of listing every single caliber, the only one that's an outlier, you see we had to put in the 327 Federal Magnum because I told people we were not removing anything from the list or adding anything new. We were just changing the structure so that we didn't have to keep coming back in.
What's
And that's
the
it.
327 Magnum?
I've never seen one, but the 327 Federal Magnum is apparently something that's been on the list for many years. Don't know if there's still any around. But we didn't want to remove it, and if we did, there'd be that one guy.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we'd be back.
And we'd be back.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, well done. Thank you. Okay, that's it. We have nobody else wanting to talk. And that's it.
How often do you finish under the 15 minutes?
Not too often. So with that, we'll close the hearing. Is there a motion to move into exec?
We can, but you can't exec any House bills, right?
Oh, that's right. I can't, can I?
We can.
Sorry about that.
We have one.
See, I was so motivated.
Because we haven't had
Yeah,
crossover?
yet.
Oh.
Well, we do have one bill to do for on the Senate bills, don't we?
Motion to move into exec? Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Then we have the
Yeah, we do. It's,
SB 542. Yep. Senator Waters has an amendment, I think.
all right.
We got a couple minutes.
What is it, 542?
Yes, sir. It's our last Senate bill.
Yeah, you're gonna get out in front of me. I still have two in EDNA, but.
Oh, yeah.
Dispatch them
I don't
tomorrow.
remember, yeah. I'll move 542 off the pass,
Is there a second? Second. Okay.
and I'll move the amendment which you have for us.
I believe it's 0951S.
I have 1018.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the other one. Yeah. Got it.
Just with two in here, no?
I'll second. I'll second it for discussion. Senator, you can have mine. Oh, you got it?
You got to make sure I got that version too. I don't know if I have that.
Good.
This has got the correct committee name, right?
Mm-hmm. Pretty sure.
Yeah, Resources and Economic Development. Wait a minute, let me just make sure that's what,
Was it supposed to change to recreation and?
that's right.
Line 14.
Yeah.
Yes. Phil, you got that? Recreation
Yeah, I thought we
and?
had
Where it
gotten-
says,
Yeah,
whom shall be a member of the resources, recreation, comma, and is what it's supposed to
it's
say.
funny, I thought we had told them to do that, and I guess what, they've made the same mistake.
So we'll make that a committee amendment.
Yeah.
We can do that one.
You're comfortable with that, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, I'd asked, would that be what OLS do, and they made the same mistake. Okay.
Resources, recreation, and development.
So that's what I move, Mr. Chair, the committee amendment.
Yeah, so we amend the amendment with the committee amendment.
And just to remind folks, this resulted from the conversation we had with the discussion of the original version of 542, that we thought we would transform this bill into a study to look at the funding issues that had arisen. I developed this language working with the director and with Colonel Jordan, and the director was able to bring this to the Fish and Game Commission last Tuesday, who voted its support for this amendment. And I know we have Susan Price here, if you want to add anything, or just that's where we're at.
Just that we need to address our funding source.
Yes.
We need to address the perpetual shortfall of our mission being expanded and money not accompanying that expansion.
If you don't mind. Yeah. And just repeat everything you just said. Exactly word for word. I am kidding.
Susan Price, Carroll County Fish and Game Commissioner. We support this study committee because the department can't keep having its mission expanded and funding not accompany it. It's a long-term recipe for failure. And the staff does a fantastic job with what we've been given, but we just keep getting more and more asked of the staff. And we need to find more robust funding and perpetual funding for the department.
I agree.
And thank you. And I really look forward to working with the commission through this vehicle, the study, so that we can figure out what kind of budget request needs to be made. And I was really particularly struck by when Director Mason talked about, the great gratitude towards Governor Sununu for including Fish and Game officers in paying for the pay raise. But that now next year is $2 million the department is going to have to find to sustain that raise, and it can't do it. It just can't do it.
Yeah,
so, and I think he said 8 to 9 layoffs if we don't find the funding, and we can't. Anyway, so I think we'll come up with some good ideas, and I appreciate the support.
No problem. It was it passed unanimously. So very good support from the commission on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. No further questions? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. And
I move out to pass as amended.
Second?
discussion? All in favor of, what's that? We are in the exec.
We did.
We voted into exec.
Oh, that was.
Earlier,
I moved out and now we're back.
Yeah, we're back in. So, all in favor of as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none?
Consensus?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor of consent?
Aye.
All right. Senator Waters, would you like to take this up?
I would, thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to move out of exec?
So moved.
Second.
All right.
We all voted for it.
Well done. That's how the Senate works. All right, so what time? I can't see the 3 minutes. All right, coffee break. Actually, I probably had too much coffee already.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah, for me there is. I do a whole pot of coffee.
Actually, I move off from coffee to iced tea after a little while.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
I'm trying to do that. Do a little bit of green tea after, burn some fat.
Well, it's settle me down a little. Sometimes if I drink too much coffee, I start.
Deborah, did you get some ice on the way over? How'd you come over? Did you come, it was Route 4, yeah?
Oh,
Did you hit
I'm
ice?
up 101. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, especially through
And
Northwood.
It was just a
Oh, wow.
slip.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hit some light rain, but no
Windshield.
ice.
Yeah, it was icing up.
Wow.
The windshield. Road form was okay. I was a little, but yeah, surprised. Kind of freezing mist.
So it's quicker for you to come 101 than 4?
Yeah, I live on 101.
Oh, okay, so you're
Yeah,
down a
but
little bit
I have to go
lower.
out of my way to get to 4.
I got you, yeah.
I live at the end of 101.
Oh, all right.
On 101.
Right? Just before it hits one there?
One exit up
Yeah.
from that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna warm up the end of the week, but pretty raw
Yeah,
today.
I think we're in the last legs of the maple season here.
Yeah. So how many gallons do you think you'll hit this year?
I'm at 790 right now.
Yeah.
I've got the rest in the evaporator, which will put me essentially right where I was last year.
Good.
It isn't running much. We've gotten next to nothing the last 2 days.
Yeah.
So-
Because of
There we
cold.
are.
Yeah, we didn't quite warm up enough. I don't know if it's gonna run today or not. We'll see.
It was like 29 last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was 29 all night long.
That's good, right?
Yeah, I mean, but we never really defrosted yesterday. We still had ice all over the trees last night.
Yeah. Oh, I could-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in where's it? Someplace in Massachusetts, the
Yeah,
trees
it
were all,
still covered in ice.
all
at
nice.
6 o'clock last night. I mean,
Yeah,
some
getting
of the
up
stuff
to
was
Route
coming off
4,
the
you're
sun,
gonna get up towards
there's still a
Epping
lot of
and,
ice in the trees.
northward Epping, all ice in the trees. Pretty.
Oh, gosh.
All right.
Plenty of snow.
We are ready for our next hearing. And look, our speaker is here, Representative Spillane, to introduce 1116.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, this is what I consider to be a sort of a housekeeping bill. A number of years ago, we passed what I call the lever action bill. It basically was a bill that allowed the use of lever action carbines in areas that were designated pistol and shotgun only if they were chambered in .357, .44 Magnum, or .45 Long Colt. In getting a lot of requests from constituents about different actions on the guns, questions from people about, well, how come I can't use a break open single shot with my son? How come I can't use a pump action? And then other people asking for different calibers that we hadn't allotted. I talked with Colonel Jordan, and he said they had no complaints in the years that have passed, and they had had a lot of requests for the same sort of thing. Can I use a different action? Can I use a different caliber? And so it was his suggestion when I said, well, how do you want to address this? What actions do you feel comfortable with? And what calibers do you want to add? He said, rightly so, that the action doesn't have any effect on the power of the round coming out. It's not changing anything. If anything, certain actions reduce the amount, but nothing's increasing it. So the action's not a problem, so we removed the specific lever action out of there to allow people to use whatever action they have. We've left it, though, changed it to all straight-walled pistol cartridges, which was Colonel Jordan's suggestion. Because when you're dealing with a straight-walled pistol cartridge, there's no neck down, there's no increase of pressure. They're all relatively low-velocity rounds, and they're exactly the same through the rifle as they were through the pistol that's already allowed in the area. So we're hoping that, and again, this is a straight-walled pistol cartridge of .357 or greater to match what we've said on the pistol round side of things.
So the amendment, you got an amendment too with this?
Nope, it's already been amended.
Okay.
It was amended in the House because, what was it we needed to do? I think the amendment was the .357 or greater because we had 38/357 since they came out of the same thing, but we didn't want the .38s to be used, so we took that off.
Okay.
And again, that's basically the way that this came about. Colonel Jordan suggested straight-walled pistol cartridges. We thought it was simple. There was some discussion on the debate in the House floor that there was questions about whether somebody could make an AR semi-automatic shooting pistol rounds. And I would point out that the only ones that would cycle appropriately through any kind of semi-automatic would be those semi-automatic pistol rounds, such as a 9mm, which is not allowed for hunting, or the .45 ACP, which is allowed, but trying to change an AR to fire those kinds of rounds would not be an easy task and would not be something that would commonly be done. And in addition, the AR mechanism itself, where it has to divert a portion of the gas to cycle itself, would make it a less velocity round anyway. So that's it. It had strong bipartisan support when it came out of committee, and it passed the House floor with, again, strong bipartisan support.
Okay. Fantastic. Questions from the committee?
Nope.
Seeing none. Well done.
Thank you.
You're our final speaker on this subject. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
So nobody else wants to speak on it? We will close the hearing. 1:16.
We got 10.
And we have nothing to exec.
We don't, we're done.
All right. Pass that down. Hey, thank you. What kind of guy I am? Okay, we're going to open up the hearing to HB 194. And do we have a prime sponsor located? And we do.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, honorable senators. My name for the record is Nick Germana. I am a state representative representing Keene Cheshire 1. And I am the prime sponsor of this bill. It's good to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Good to see you as well.
Serving with you on a study committee over the summer. I am a historian and a professor of history, and to me, history is something that needs to be engaged with. What I want is for my students and really for all of us to be able to, as I said, engage with our history and to talk about it and to celebrate it. I think we are fortunate to live in a part of the country that has incredibly rich history. And when I think about public monuments, for example, which is what this bill deals with, this is really an opportunity for us in our public spaces to engage with our rich history. I think too often monuments are, for a lot of people, things that you just kind of pass by every day without thinking very much about. Hopefully we do take some time to take a look at those monuments. But I think for the most part, they're just kind of there. And most people don't have an opportunity to engage with them. So the origin of this bill is to have, my idea was to have one place on a state website where all of the publicly maintained monuments in the state are listed. And I'll say a little bit more about kind of how that evolved as I worked with Director Ben Wilson from the Division of Historical Resources. And what I really envision is the idea of elementary school classes or middle school classes having projects where a teacher says, go out into the community and find these monuments and do some research, right? And then come back in and talk to the class about who these people were, right? Who came from our region. I think it's a great way to engage students in local history. And I also hope that it's a way to help root our young people in our history. We do have, a lot of our young people who end up kind of going away to school and going away to college may not be coming back to settle in our communities. And there are lots of reasons for that around housing. This obviously isn't going to be the thing that solves that problem. But to feel rooted in an area, I think, is the reason why, we have all made our homes here and raised our families here. And if we can get young people really rooted in their communities, I think history is the way to do that and will help them want to return to New Hampshire in order to raise their families here as we have. I'm also on the board of director of New Hampshire Humanities. This has nothing to do with New Hampshire Humanities, but just that's another example of my belief that we need to do as much as we can to engage our communities in these celebrations of the cultures of the state. So that's kind of where this bill began, was my desire to have that kind of tool. I worked with Director Wilson in order to make it something that the department, the division can do with current resources, using staff that they currently have. The bill specifies publicly maintained monuments. There was some question about how do we define monuments. That's a very good question and a potentially tricky one. But in this case, it's specific to publicly maintained monuments, right? So the Division of Historical Resources can reach out to towns, and towns will have those lists, right? Because they are maintained by the town, right? So we're talking about a finite universe of objects. So within those parameters, Director Wilson and I worked on the language to make this something that can be done using current resources without the department having to take on any costs or any additional staff. Another aspect of this emphasis on local and state history that struck me kind of in the process was we are reluctant, and with good reason, to have a lot of name days, right? So we often, right, get these bills that, this is going to be whatever day, right? We tried in Cheshire County to get one for Granny D. Haddock, right, a voting rights activist. And I understand why we're reluctant to do that, right? I mean, you'd have a name day for everybody, and the reality is how much attention does that really get? What does that really do for our local and state history? And as I thought more about that, I think that this is a good way to try to draw attention to those kinds of figures. The committee who looks at those bills in the House, they often say, well, do something at the local level, right? Draw attention at the local level. Have a Granny D Day in Peterborough or in Keene, right? Where you're actually getting people engaged. That means a lot more than just having a day that we call this and the governor signs a piece of paper saying it's Granny D Day. And again, that, kind of clicked for me as I was thinking, this is a way to do that, right? If we have kids, I would love it, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, do a project on local history and see, the things that are memorialized in their town. But it would also be really cool if a group of 6th graders went to City Hall and said, hey, there's this other person in our town who's really interesting and important, and they don't have a monument, right? And so what if we had a marker for whoever? So I thought that would also be a way for us to recognize folks who have not yet been recognized. That's much more meaningful than, as I said, the idea that we would just have a day and the governor would sign a declaration to that effect. So that was the origin of the bill, is my desire to see us use public monuments as an educational tool to engage everybody, but particularly young people. I've talked to a lot of teachers about this. And I worked with Director Wilson at the Division of Historical Resources to make sure that this is something that can be done within the resources that the division currently has. So with that, I'm happy to take
Senator
questions.
Waters with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because my bill's at 9:45, so I'm going to
Yeah,
ask.
no,
you.
you're fine.
So thank you very much. A number of years ago, I had a bill that would have created a similar register for burying grounds and cemeteries, and the division went nuts, saying we have to hire staff and we can't do this and the other thing. So I'm glad they've changed their tune, but I think it does raise the question as to your definition of public monument and historical site includes cemeteries.
Thank you for the question, Senator. And that was something that came up a lot in our discussions when this was in committee. And that would depend on what is reported by the individual towns. And so if those cemeteries, which in some cases I think will be, are reported by the towns as monuments that are publicly maintained, then it will be on the list. So it's not a comprehensive answer. It wouldn't comprehensively include all cemeteries, but it really depends on what's reported by the towns.
And if I may follow up. And I will talk to Ben. There is a kind of a question about cemeteries, about, there are monuments in cemeteries, for tombs or even individuals' grave markers are monuments. So I'll talk to him about what the intent is here. There are public cemeteries and any burying ground which is no longer, which has been abandoned, municipalities can take over as public, and then they have to maintain it and fence it and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ambiguity as to what categories are there. So if it does seem as if we need some clarity about that definition of monument, about including or excluding cemeteries, some phrase, I will check with you, but does that seem to make sense that I have that inquiry with Ben?
Absolutely. I appreciate that very much, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Herzl?
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. Based on the fiscal note that they wrote prior to the amendment, it says that they would need, the State's Department would need to hire a historian. Does that change? You had just stated that they didn't need to. Is that what the amendment did?
Yes, thank you, Senator. I put this bill in right after getting elected, and I made a rookie mistake and assigned it to the wrong, to the state archives, and the amendment changed it, and the amendment took off the fiscal note. And in fact, the Finance Committee in the House waived the bill because the amendment shifting it eliminated the fiscal note.
Further questions? I just have one. Hannah Dustin, is that municipally taken care of?
I don't know. That's a good
'Cause
question.
It's been brutalized over the years, and I haven't seen any updates to it, but that's in town of Cook. Just
Yeah, fair question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your testimony and bringing this
Thank
up.
you very much.
Representative Peter. Also in support, wishing to speak, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you don't mind hitting your button.
There we go.
Wonderful.
I do know that. Thank you, Mr.
Not your
Chairman.
first time.
And members of the committee. For the record, I'm State Representative Peter Petrino, representing Hillsborough 43, the town of Milford. But today I'm testifying as a former high school social studies teacher of 40 years, both in private and public schools. And I'm excited about this legislation because I really believe it's going to be beneficial to students. When I was the Social Studies Department Chair at Merrimack High School, I had my students engaged in a program called National History Day. National History Day is not just one day, but it's the culmination of students' work throughout the school year in which students pick a historical topic, they form a thesis, and then they present their findings and conclusions by way of a project. It could be an exhibit, it could be a video documentary, a term paper, a performance. But the one thing that they all have in common is the research element, primary source documents, very important. Now, these high school students compete with other students from across the state at Plymouth State University for the state competition. In fact, next week, I am going to serve as a judge for the very first time. Now, winners here in New Hampshire advance to the National History Day program, which is at the University of Maryland, and also the American History Museum, the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. One of my students did very well. She won a $10,000 prize from the History Channel, a student of mine from Merrimack High School. But that being said, New Hampshire students generally do not do well on the national competition when they're competing against states like California and Texas and even Massachusetts, where there are a lot of resources. Now, I'm excited about this piece of legislation because I can see it streamlining the process where all of our monuments are in one database and students can have access to it. I think that's a tremendous resource to help our students, particularly in this program that I spoke of. And that being said, I'm very anxious to see this move forward. So I did testify before the House Committee, and I gave the PI on the House floor. And here I am today asking for your support, moving this forward as ought to pass.
Thank you for your testimony.
Well, thank
Questions
you.
from the committee?
All right.
Prayers go out to Maryland right now. But thank you very much. And
You,
seeing, anybody else want to testify on this bill? Seeing none? We'll close the hearing. Well done. Did you see the bridge collapse?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh. on HB 1179FN, and we're going to hear from the prime sponsor, Representative Horgan. Right?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Horgan. I represent Farmington in District 1, Stratford County. Thank you for allowing me to address this HB 1179, which is relative to access to the state parks, day use areas. 1179 was originally created to allow both retired military, strictly retired military under 65 from both New Hampshire and Massachusetts for a total of about 24,000 people, with a financial impact of about 15,000 annually. And it got amended and passed. As amended, it did a couple of significant changes. It had a New Hampshire residency requirement, which eliminated all the Mass individuals. So that cut the numbers down significantly. But it added military spouses, retired military spouses, and surviving spouses of retired military, which cut the number down to about 8,000, just over 8,000 individuals, for a physical impact of roughly $5,000, a little over $5,000 a year. The bill itself is a good deal. It doesn't make a major impact on Division of Parks' annual allotment for such programs. And the physical impacts that were originally provided by the Division of Parks was significantly high, and I think they were encompassing all their free access programs, because the original thing was about 362,000, not even close. Our highest estimate would have been the original bill at about 15,000 annually, and with the amendment, it cuts it down to just over 8,000 people that are eligible, that are not eligible for other programs, and cuts the cost down to just over $5,000. And that's all there is.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? How did the department, did they testify on this at all? The parks?
Did it go to finance? Oh, no, I haven't had a whole lot of input. When I first called Division of Parks, they said they didn't track that kind of information. So the statistics being used are from 2019, and are relatively close based on those statistics. And the numbers are pretty good. Some of the population statistics are a little more accurate than the government, military retired type numbers. Nothing is current.
Right. That's providing that everybody went to these.
Yeah. And the people, and we have a number of complementary programs, but those who are under 65, retired military, and regardless of pay grade, so there was a limitation originally. There's no limitation. So if you're a retired military, regardless of pay grade, New Hampshire resident, you, your spouse, or your surviving spouse would be eligible for this program. That's it.
Senator Herzl, question.
Just out of curiosity, if someone is going to utilize this program, what would they use to prove that they're either, I get you have a retired military Armed Forces card. What would, let's say, a spouse of a deceased member, do they still have their Armed Forces dependent card?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, a spouse would have a dependent ID, but the military IDs don't have physical addresses on it, so it'd be looking at something like a New Hampshire driver's license. Mm-hmm. All right, the ID establishes them as a dependent or a spouse. The driver's license would establish them as a New Hampshire resident. That's the new criteria. New Hampshire residents, retired military, or spouse of a retired military, or surviving spouse of retired military.
So that spouse would have to have both cards, a driver's license?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Further questions? Seeing none, Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're going to close the hearing on HB 1179 FM.
You sure no one else wanted to testify?
Anybody out there? No? Appreciate it.